Dr. Olivia Mitchell adjusted her stethoscope and smiled at the child sitting on the examination table. At 32, she had built a reputation as one of Boston's most respected pediatricians. Her gentle manner with children, combined with her sharp diagnostic skills, had earned her the admiration of colleagues and patients alike. "All done, Jake. You're the bravest 7-year-old I know," she said, offering him a colorful sticker from her collection. Jake's mother, Sarah Wilson, watched from the corner of the room with appreciation. "Dr. Mitchell, I don't know what we'd do without you. Jake wouldn't see any other doctor." Olivia smiled, her warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's the highest compliment I could receive." She quickly updated Jake's chart on her tablet. "His ear infection is clearing up nicely. Continue the antibiotics for 3 more days, and he should be good as new." After the Wilsons left, Olivia glanced at her watch. It was already 6:30 p.m., and she was meeting Robert at 7:30 for dinner. She quickly finished her notes, said goodbye to the clinic staff, and headed to her apartment in the Back Bay neighborhood. Robert Taylor was everything Olivia had ever dreamed of in a partner. At 40, he was handsome, intelligent, and charismatic, respected community leader who had transformed the Islamic Cultural Center of Boston into a beacon for interfaith dialogue and community service. His impressive fundraising efforts had enabled the center to expand its services, offering everything from after-school programs to healthcare clinics for underserved populations. As the daughter of an Egyptian father and American mother, Olivia had sometimes felt caught between 2 worlds. Robert, with his progressive interpretation of faith and his dedication to building bridges between communities, represented everything she valued. She slipped into a deep blue dress that complemented her olive skin tone and applied a touch of makeup. Robert always told her she looked beautiful with or without it, but tonight was special. They had been dating for a year, and there was something in his voice when he called to arrange dinner that made her heart race with anticipation. The restaurant was one of Boston's finest, with panoramic views of the harbor. Robert was already waiting at their table when she arrived, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit. He stood as she approached, kissing her cheek with the reserved affection that had characterized their relationship. "You look stunning," he said, his dark eyes warm with admiration. "Thank you," she replied, noting the slight tension in his posture. "Is everything okay?" Robert smiled, but she could sense his nervousness. "Everything is perfect, especially now that you're here." They ordered their meals and chatted about their day. Robert spoke about the new youth center the Islamic Cultural Center was planning, thanks to a generous donation from a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. Olivia shared stories about her patients, careful to maintain confidentiality while conveying the rewarding aspects of her work. After their main course, Robert grew quiet. He reached for her hand across the table, his touch gentle but firm. "Olivia, this past year has been the most meaningful of my life," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "When I moved to Boston 5 years ago, I came with a vision of building community and fostering understanding. I never expected to find someone who would become not just a supporter of that vision, but an essential part of it, and of my life." Olivia's heart thundered in her chest as Robert reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring, its brilliance catching the soft light of the restaurant. "Olivia Mitchell, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Robert, yes, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she marveled at how perfectly it fit, just like everything about their relationship seemed to. News of their engagement spread quickly through their tight-knit communities. Olivia's parents, though initially surprised by her choice, they had always imagined her with a fellow doctor, quickly warmed to Robert after meeting him. His respectful demeanor and obvious adoration for their daughter won them over. "He's a remarkable man," Olivia's father admitted after their first dinner together. "I can see why you love him." The weeks following their engagement were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Robert suggested a relatively short engagement, explaining that his busy schedule with the center would make planning easier if they married within 6 months. Olivia, eager to begin their life together, readily agreed. As they planned their wedding, Olivia noticed small peculiarities in Robert's behavior. When she asked about his family, he spoke vaguely about his parents' passing and his distant relationship with extended relatives. When she suggested reaching out to his college friends for the wedding, he demurred, saying he preferred to keep the celebration intimate. "I've always been private about my personal life," he explained when she pressed for details. "My work puts me in the public eye so much that I've learned to cherish privacy where I can find it." His explanation seemed reasonable, and his devotion to her never wavered. He consulted her on every aspect of their future together, from selecting a home, a beautiful brownstone in Beacon Hill, to planning their honeymoon, a 3-week tour of the Mediterranean. The only area where Robert seemed hesitant was physical intimacy. Their kisses were tender but brief, and he never initiated anything more. When Olivia tried to deepen their connection, he gently pulled away, explaining that his faith and personal values led him to believe in waiting until marriage. "It's important to me that we build our relationship on something deeper than physical attraction," he told her. "I respect you too much to treat our relationship casually." Though raised in a more liberal household, Olivia respected his convictions. His restraint seemed to reflect the depth of his character and reinforced her belief that she had found a man of integrity and principle. As their wedding day approached, Olivia's mother noticed her occasional unease and invited her for lunch at their favorite cafe. "Sweetheart, is everything all right? You seem distracted lately," she probed gently. Olivia stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "Everything's fine, Mom. It's just there are times when Robert feels distant, like there's a part of himself he's holding back." Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Marriage is a leap of faith, Olivia. No matter how long you've known someone, there's always more to discover. The question is whether you trust Robert to make that journey of discovery with you honestly and lovingly." Olivia thought about her mother's words as she tried on her wedding dress for the final fitting later that day. Standing before the mirror in the flowing white gown, she felt a surge of certainty. Whatever small doubts she harbored were merely pre-wedding jitters. Robert was the man she wanted to spend her life with, and in just 2 weeks, they would begin that journey together. The Fairmont Copley Plaza Hotel transformed into a vision of elegance for Olivia and Robert's wedding. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over arrangements of white roses and delicate baby's breath. 200 guests filled the grand ballroom, colleagues from the hospital, members of the Islamic Cultural Center, and friends from both sides. Olivia's father squeezed her hand as they prepared to walk down the aisle. "So you look beautiful, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Robert is a fortunate man." The ceremony blended traditions, honoring both Olivia's mixed heritage and Robert's faith. When the imam pronounced them husband and wife, Robert's kiss was tender but restrained, even for a public setting. Olivia dismissed her momentary disappointment, reminding herself that tonight would be different. During the reception, Robert moved through the crowd with the charisma that had first attracted her to him. He charmed her relatives, spoke eloquently during his toast, and maintained a respectful distance from the champagne being served. Watching him from across the room, Olivia felt a surge of pride. This accomplished, principled man was now her husband. Dr. James Wilson, Olivia's mentor from medical school, approached her during a quiet moment. "You've chosen well, Olivia," he said, his eyes twinkling behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Robert's work at the Cultural Center has transformed healthcare access for underserved communities. The funding he secured for the free clinic has saved countless lives." "I know," Olivia said, smiling as she watched Robert deep in conversation with one of her cousins. "I couldn't ask for a better partner." As the evening drew to a close, Olivia's mother helped her change from her wedding gown into a simple cream-colored dress for their departure. "Remember," her mother said with a knowing smile, "marriage is about communication. Don't expect perfection. Tonight or any night, just be honest with each other." Olivia blushed at her mother's implication but appreciated the advice. She and Robert had waited for this night, and while she felt a flutter of nervousness, She trusted that their connection would guide them. Their honeymoon suite at the Four Seasons overlooked Boston Common, now dusted with the first snow of December. The room was a symphony of luxury, champagne chilling in a silver bucket, rose petals strewn across the king-sized bed, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city lights. Robert loosened his tie and poured them each a glass of sparkling water, declining the champagne. "To new beginnings," he said, his glass touching hers with a delicate clink. Olivia sipped her water, watching him over the rim of her glass. There was a new tension between them, an electricity she hadn't felt before. "I'll give you some privacy," Robert said, gesturing toward the bathroom. "Take your time." Olivia changed into the silk nightgown she had carefully selected for tonight, applied a touch of the perfume Robert had complimented, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her heart raced with anticipation and a hint of nervousness. When Robert emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later, he was wearing pajamas and a terry cloth robe tied tightly at the waist. His face was pale, and he avoided meeting her eyes as he sat beside her on the bed, leaving a careful distance between them. "Olivia," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you." The gravity in his tone sent a chill through her. "What is it, Robert? You're scaring me." He took a deep breath, his hands clasped so tightly, his knuckles whitened. "I haven't been completely honest with you." At Olivia's mind raced through possibilities. A previous marriage, financial troubles, a health issue he'd concealed. Nothing prepared her for what came next. "I was born with a condition," he continued, each word seemingly painful to articulate. "A rare congenital abnormality." He finally met her gaze, his eyes filled with anguish. I wasn't born with male genitalia." The words hung in the air between them, incomprehensible at first. Olivia blinked, certain she had misheard. "What do you mean?" she asked, her medical training kicking in as she processed his statement. "You mean you have an intersex condition?" Robert shook his head. "Not exactly. The doctors called it aphalia. It's extremely rare. I have testes but was born without a penis." Olivia's medical mind raced ahead of her emotional response. Aphalia. She had read about the condition during her medical training, but had never encountered a case. It occurred in approximately 1 in 30 million births. "Why didn't you tell me?" she managed, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. "I was afraid," he admitted, a tear tracking down his cheek. "Afraid of losing you. Every time I tried to find the right moment, I couldn't bear the thought of seeing rejection in your eyes." Olivia stood abruptly, needing distance to process this revelation. "But we were engaged. We were planning our lives together. You let me walk down that aisle without—" Her voice broke. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" "I thought we could find solutions together," Robert said, desperation coloring his words. "There are surgical options, alternative ways to be intimate. I've researched everything. I needed you to know me first, to love me for who I am, beyond my condition." "Love is built on trust, Robert." Anger began to replace her shock. "You denied me the chance to make an informed decision about our future together. You took that choice away from me. Please," he begged, reaching for her hand. "I've spent my entire life hiding this secret, afraid of being judged, afraid of being seen as less than a man. The work I do, the person I've become, none of that is a lie. My feelings for you are real." Olivia pulled her hand away. "How can I believe anything now? What else haven't you told me?" The question hung between them like a physical barrier. Robert's silence told her there was more. "My name," he finally said, his voice hollow. "Robert Taylor isn't my birth name. I changed it legally years ago after college. I wanted a fresh start, somewhere people didn't know about my condition." The room seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. "Who are you then? Who did I just marry?" "I was born David Richardson, but everything else, my education, my work at the center, that's all real. I just wanted to leave David behind." Olivia paced the room, trying to reconcile the man she thought she knew with this stranger before her. "Did anyone at the wedding know? Does anyone in Boston know?" Robert, or David, shook his head. No one knows everything. My medical records are sealed. When I moved here, I presented myself as Robert Taylor from the beginning. A terrible thought struck Olivia. What about the donations for the center? The millions you've raised? Is that real? Of course, he insisted. Every dollar is accounted. For every project legitimate. My condition has nothing to do with my professional integrity. Olivia reached for her phone. I need to call my mother. I need to get out of here. Please, he pleaded, standing to block her path to the door. Let's talk about this. We can annul the marriage if that's what you want, but please don't expose me to everyone. I'll lose everything. My position, the respect of the community, the center's work will suffer. Olivia stopped, her hand on the doorknob. Despite her anger and sense of betrayal, she couldn't ignore the genuine fear in his eyes or the potential consequences for people who depended on the center's services. I won't expose your condition, she said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. That's your private medical information, but I can't stay here tonight. I can't look at you right now without seeing all the lies. Robert sank onto the bed, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I understand. I'll make arrangements to move out of the brownstone. It's yours. I insist. It's the least I can do. Olivia gathered her purse and the small overnight bag she had packed for their first night. At the door, she paused, the weight of the diamond ring on her finger suddenly unbearable. She slipped it off and placed it on the entryway table. I need time to think, she said, not turning to look at him. Don't contact me. My lawyer will be in touch about annulment proceedings. As the door closed behind her, Olivia leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe through the tightness in her chest. Just hours ago, she had been a beaming bride, full of hope for her future. Now she felt like a character in someone else's story, a story with an ending she couldn't predict. In the taxi to her parents' home, she stared at her reflection in the window, wondering how she could have been so blind. Had there been signs she'd ignored? Had she been so enamored with the idea of Robert, his charm, his status, his apparent devotion to helping others, that she'd missed the man beneath the carefully constructed facade? The taxi pulled up to her parents' colonial-style home in Newton. The lights were still on despite the late hour. Olivia paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, gathering her courage. How could she explain what had happened when she herself could barely comprehend it? Before she could reach the front steps, the door opened. Her mother stood silhouetted against the warm light from the foyer, concern etched on her face. Olivia, what's happened? The simple question broke the last of Olivia's composure. She moved into her mother's embrace, tears finally flowing freely. Everything, she whispered, everything has happened. The morning after her wedding night, Olivia sat at her parents' kitchen table, staring into a mug of untouched coffee. Her mother had called the hospital to arrange emergency leave, giving no details except that there had been a family crisis. Her father alternated between stunned silence and quiet fury as Olivia recounted Robert's revelations. You need to talk to a lawyer, he finally said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Today. Olivia nodded, too exhausted to argue. Her phone had been buzzing with congratulatory texts and emails all morning. She couldn't bear to look at them. I'll call Patricia, her mother offered, referring to a family friend who practiced family law. She'll see you immediately. By noon, Olivia was sitting in Patricia Morgan's office in downtown Boston, explaining the bizarre situation. Patricia's expression remained professionally neutral, though her eyes widened slightly at certain details. This is grounds for annulment, she confirmed after Olivia finished. Fraudulent inducement. He deliberately concealed information that would have affected your decision to marry. I don't want anything from him, Olivia said. I just want this to be over as quickly and quietly as possible. Understood, but I should warn you, the legalities might be straightforward, but the personal aftermath rarely is. Patricia leaned forward. Have you considered the possibility that there might be more to Robert's deception than his medical condition? Olivia frowned. What do you mean? In my experience, people who hide fundamental truths often have more than one secret. You mentioned he changed his name, that his background is vague. It might be worth investigating before you finalize anything. The suggestion planted a seed of unease. Though angry and hurt, Olivia had accepted Robert's explanation about changing his name to escape his past. But what if there was more? After leaving Patricia's office, instead of returning to her parents' home, Olivia found herself driving to the brownstone she and Robert had purchased together. She needed clothes, personal items, and perhaps answers. The house was empty when she arrived. She moved through the rooms that had been decorated with such hope, gathering essentials. In the home office, she hesitated before Robert's desk. It felt wrong to snoop, yet something compelled her to look. The desk drawers contained nothing suspicious, just neatly organized files related to the Islamic Cultural Center, their mortgage papers, insurance documents. She was about to close the final drawer when she noticed a false bottom. Sliding it open revealed a passport in the name of David Richardson, a driver's license from Nevada for someone named Michael Winters with Robert's photo, and several bank statements for accounts she'd never seen before. Olivia's hands trembled as she examined the documents. The passport was legitimate but expired. The driver's license looked authentic, issued only 3 years ago. The bank statements showed transactions totaling millions of dollars, far more money than Robert had ever mentioned. Her phone rang, startling her. It was Dr. James Wilson, her mentor. "Olivia, I hope I'm not interrupting your honeymoon preparations, but something urgent has come up regarding the free clinic funding," he said, his voice unusually tense. "The grant money Robert promised. The bank is saying there's an issue with the authorization. They're refusing to release the funds without his direct approval." Olivia's heart sank. "How much money are we talking about, James?" $2 million. Construction is already underway. We have contractors who need to be paid by the end of the week. "I'll have Robert contact you," she said, unable to explain the situation yet. After hanging up, Olivia sat at the desk, surrounded by evidence of a life built on lies. She needed to understand the scope of Robert's deception before taking her next step. She drove to the Islamic Cultural Center, where Robert's assistant Aisha greeted her with surprise. "Dr. Mitchell, I thought you'd be on your honeymoon by now." "There's been a change of plans," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Is there somewhere we could speak privately?" In Aisha's office, Olivia struggled to find the right words. "Aisha, how long have you worked with Robert?" "Almost 5 years, since he founded the center. And the funding for the center's programs do. You handle any of the financial arrangements?" Aisha looked puzzled. "Some of the day-to-day accounting, yes, but the major donations and grants go directly through Robert. He has relationships with the donors and prefers to handle that personally." She hesitated. "Is everything okay? You seem worried." Olivia chose her next words carefully. "I'm concerned about some irregularities I've noticed. Dr. Wilson from Boston General called about funding issues with the free clinic." Aisha's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "That's strange. Robert assured the board last week that everything was in place." She lowered her voice. "To be honest, several projects have had funding delays recently. Robert always resolves them, but it's been happening more frequently." "Could I see the financial records for the center?" Olivia asked. Aisha bit her lip. "I'd need Robert's authorization for the complete records, but I can show you the public filings. They're accessible to anyone." The public records painted a picture of an organization that had grown rapidly under Robert's leadership, with impressively large donations from various sources. But there were concerning patterns, funds transferred between accounts with vague justifications, donations listed from entities Olivia couldn't find when she searched online. She thanked Aisha and was preparing to leave when her phone buzzed. With a text from an unknown number, "I know what Robert Taylor is hiding. Meet me at Thinking Cup on Newbury in 30 minutes if you want the truth. Come alone." Olivia stared at the message, her pulse quickening. It could be a trap or a cruel prank from someone who had heard about her sudden departure after the wedding. But it could also be the answers she desperately needed. The Thinking Cup cafe was crowded with afternoon customers when Olivia arrived. She ordered a tea and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance, unsure who she was looking for. After 10 minutes, a young man in his early 20s approached her table. He had dark hair and eyes that seemed oddly familiar. Dr. Mitchell? He asked, his voice low. I'm Noah. Thank you for coming. How do you know who I am? And how did you get my number? Noah glanced around nervously before sitting. I've been following Robert's, or should I say David's, activities for years. When I saw the wedding announcement in the Boston Globe, I knew I had to warn you. Warn me about what? Olivia asked, leaning forward. The man you married isn't who he claims to be. Yes, he was born David Richardson, but that's just the beginning of his deceptions. Noah pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of a younger Robert standing beside a woman and a small boy. That's him with my mother and me, 15 years ago in Chicago. He was going by the name Stephen Murray then. Olivia studied the photo, her stomach knotting. The resemblance between Noah and Robert was subtle, but unmistakable in the shape of their eyes and jawline. You're his son? Noah nodded. Biologically, yes. But he abandoned us when I was 8, taking most of my mother's savings with him. We later discovered he had been running investment scams throughout the Midwest, using his position in our church to gain people's trust. Each word felt like another crack in the foundation of what Olivia had believed about her husband. Why are you telling me this now? Because it's a pattern he can't break, Noah explained, his expression hardening. He finds communities of faith. It used to be Christian churches, now apparently it's Islamic centers, where people trust based on shared values. He builds a reputation, raises money for projects, and then ensures enough of that money flows back to him. When he's taken what he can or senses people growing suspicious, he disappears and starts over somewhere new. If what you're saying is true, why haven't the authorities caught him? He's careful. He uses just enough of the money for legitimate projects to maintain his cover. The rest gets funneled through a complex web of accounts before disappearing. Into offshore holdings. Noah pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. These are news clippings about similar scams in Chicago, Denver, and Phoenix, all places where he operated before coming to Boston. Different names, same method. Olivia leafed through the articles, each describing trusted community leaders who had vanished after questions arose about missing funds. The physical descriptions matched Robert, though the names and specific details varied. The condition he told you about, Noah said hesitantly. It's real. I know because my mother told me after he left. She thought it explained his emotional distance, his refusal to be physically intimate, but it doesn't explain or excuse what he does to people who trust him. Olivia closed her eyes briefly, struggling to process everything. What do you want from me? Your help, Noah said simply. I've been tracking him for 3 years, trying to gather enough evidence for the FBI to build a case. But he's careful about electronic trails, and most victims are too embarrassed to come forward. If you could help me access financial records from the cultural center, we might finally have enough to stop him before he disappears again. Olivia thought of Dr. Wilson and the free clinic that might never be built, of the community members who had entrusted their donations to Robert's care, of her own shattered trust. I need to think about this, she said finally. What you're suggesting, it could destroy the center's reputation, hurt innocent people who work there. I understand, Noah said, sliding a business card across the table, but please don't wait too long. Based on his patterns, when he senses exposure, he moves quickly. Your wedding and now its apparent collapse might accelerate his timeline. As Noah stood to leave, he hesitated. I'm sorry this happened to you. My mother, she never really recovered from his betrayal. Don't let him do the same to you. Olivia remained at the table long after Noah left, the folder of evidence before her, her tea growing cold. The busy cafe continued around her, people laughing, sharing stories, living normal lives while hers had shattered into unrecognizable pieces. Her phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Please call me. We need to talk. I can explain everything. She stared at the message, wondering which everything he meant. His condition, his false identity, or the alleged financial fraud that had apparently followed him across the country. Whatever explanation he offered, how could she possibly believe it now? With sudden clarity, Olivia knew what she had to do. She texted Patricia Morgan, "Need to meet again, situation more complicated than we thought." Then she called Dr. Wilson. "James, I think we need to look more closely at the cultural center's finances, and we might need to involve the authorities. 3 days after meeting Noah, Olivia sat in a conference room at the Boston FBI field office. Across from her, Special Agent Diana Cruz reviewed the documents spread across the table. Financial records from the Islamic Cultural Center, Noah's research, and the additional evidence Olivia had gathered from the brownstone. "This is compelling," Agent Cruz said, her expression grave. "Based on what we're seeing, Robert Taylor, or whatever his real name is, has orchestrated similar schemes in at least 4 cities before Boston." Patricia Morgan, sitting beside Olivia, leaned forward. "What happens now?" "We need to move." "Carefully," Agent Cruz explained. "If he suspects he's under investigation, he could disappear or destroy evidence. We'd like to set up surveillance and continue building the case before making an arrest." Olivia nodded, though the thought of Robert continuing to operate freely, even temporarily, made her stomach churn. The community trusts him completely. Every day he remains in position, more people could be hurt. "I understand your concern, Dr. Mitchell," Agent Cruz said, "but rushing could mean he ultimately evades justice. We need to be thorough." As they discussed next steps, Olivia's phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Robert, sent to her and the entire board of the Islamic Cultural Center. "Dear colleagues and friends, it is with a heavy heart that I must inform you of my immediate resignation as Director of the Islamic Cultural Center of Boston. Personal circumstances require that I depart Boston for an extended period. I am deeply grateful for the trust you have placed in me these past 5 years. To ensure continuity of our important work, I have arranged for all project funds to be transferred to our operational accounts, accessible to the board. I have complete faith in your ability to carry forward our mission. With profound respect and gratitude, Robert Taylor." Olivia looked up from her phone, her heart racing. He's running. This email just went out to the entire board. Agent Cruz immediately took action, speaking rapidly into her phone while signaling to colleagues outside the conference room. "We need to move now. Get teams to his residence, the airport, and train stations. Place his name on travel watch lists immediately." Turning back to Olivia, she asked, "Do you have any idea where he might go? Any places he's mentioned having connections?" Olivia tried to recall any clues from their conversations over the past year. "He travels to New York regularly for fundraising. He's mentioned Dubai several times, claimed to have investors there. And Istanbul, he said it was his favorite city." Agent Cruz relayed this information to her team, then addressed Olivia again. "We need your help with one more thing, Dr. Mitchell. If he contacts you, we need you to keep him talking. Try to find out where he is without making him suspicious." "Do you think he'll reach out to me?" Olivia asked, surprised. "People like him, they often can't resist one last attempt at manipulation. They need to believe they still have control of the narrative." As if on cue, Olivia's phone rang with an unknown number. Agent Cruz nodded encouragingly as Olivia answered, putting the call on speaker. "Hello? Olivia?" Robert's voice sounded different, harder without the warm, measured tones she had grown accustomed to. "I assume you've seen my email by now." "Yes," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "You're leaving? Just like that?" "I don't have a choice. After our wedding night, I knew it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled." There was a pause. "How much have you discovered?" Agent Cruz scribbled a note. "Keep him talking. Ask where he is." "Enough," Olivia answered carefully. "Where are you, Robert? Or should I call you David or Stephen? I'm not even sure who I'm talking to anymore." A bitter laugh came through the speaker. "You've been busy. Did my son find you?" "Noah always was persistent. You knew he was looking for you." "I've always known, just as I've always known this day would come." His voice softened slightly. "What I didn't anticipate was meeting someone like you, someone I actually considered telling the truth." "But you didn't," Olivia countered, anger rising in her chest. "You married me under false pretenses. You lied about everything that matters." "Not everything," he insisted. "My feelings for you were real, probably the most genuine thing about me in years." Agent Cruz made a circling motion with her finger. Keep going. If that were true, you wouldn't be running now, Olivia said. You'd stay and face the consequences. 6 months after Robert's arrest, Boston experienced one of those perfect spring days that made the harsh winter worth enduring. Olivia sat in a small conference room at Boston General Hospital, reviewing final plans for the community health clinic that would open the following month. The pharmacy space looks smaller than I expected, she noted, pointing to the blueprints spread across the table. Dr. Wilson nodded. We had to make adjustments after the funding shortfall, but the examination rooms are still the size we wanted, and we preserved the mental health counseling area. The clinic represented both an ending and a beginning. After Robert's arrest, a forensic audit had revealed that only about 60% of the money raised for the project actually existed. The rest had been creative accounting, promises built on nothing more substantial than Robert's charisma and the community's trust. Rather than abandon the project, Olivia had thrown herself into saving it. She leveraged her hospital connections, secured emergency grants, and even contributed a significant portion of her savings. The resulting clinic would be smaller than originally planned, but would still provide essential services to an underserved community. The opening ceremony is set for June 15th, Dr. Wilson continued. The board would like you to speak, given everything you've done to make this happen. Olivia hesitated. I'm not sure that's appropriate. I'd rather keep a low profile. Olivia, Dr. Wilson said gently, you've spent 6 months hiding from public attention. At some point, you need to reclaim your place in the community. She knew he was right. After the initial media frenzy surrounding Robert's arrest, with headlines like Conman Imam's secret life exposed and Dr. Bride's wedding night, nightmare, Olivia had retreated from public view. She took a leave of absence from her pediatric practice, changed her phone number, and moved to a small apartment in Cambridge. Only in recent months had she begun to emerge, focusing her energy on salvaging the clinic project while rebuilding her shattered sense of self. I'll think about it, she promised, gathering her papers. I should get going. I'm meeting Noah for coffee at 3. Dr. Wilson raised an eyebrow. You two have become quite close. We've been through a unique shared trauma, Olivia said, deflecting the implication in his tone. It helps to talk to someone who understands. Noah Richardson had remained in Boston after his father's arrest, finding work as a graphic designer at a local agency. His relationship with Olivia had evolved from reluctant allies to genuine friends. They met regularly, sometimes discussing Robert, sometimes deliberately avoiding the topic in favor of movies, books, or Noah's dating disasters. Thinking Cup. Cafe had become their regular meeting spot, a deliberate choice to reclaim the location where Noah had first revealed the truth about Robert. Olivia arrived to find him already seated at their usual table, 2 drinks waiting. Chai latte, extra. Shot, he said, pushing a cup toward her. You look exhausted. Final clinic planning meeting, she explained, sinking into the chair. Everything's on track for the June opening. That's amazing, Noah said, genuine admiration in his voice. 6 months ago, most people thought the project was dead. Some days I thought so too. She sipped her latte, appreciating the familiar comfort of the spiced warmth. Have you heard anything? Noah knew she was asking about his father. The plea deal is finalized. 15 years with possibility of parole after 10, in exchange for cooperating with investigations into some of his financial partners. Olivia nodded, absorbing the information. Robert's case had moved through the judicial system with surprising speed, partly due to his cooperation and partly due to the overwhelming evidence against him. The investigators had uncovered a trail of deception spanning nearly 2 decades, with estimated financial fraud totaling over $12 million. Are you going to the sentencing? Noah asked. I haven't decided, Olivia admitted. Part of me feels I should be there to see it through to the end. Another part wants to leave it all behind. Noah understood her ambivalence. He had his own complicated feelings about the man who had given him life, but had never truly been a father. Whatever you decide, I support you. and I'll go with you, if you want company." "Thank you," she smiled, grateful for his steady presence in her life. As they shifted to lighter topics, Olivia's phone buzzed with an email notification from Patricia Morgan. The subject line simply read, "Annulment final." "Good news?" Noah asked, noting her expression. "The annulment's official. Legally, the marriage never existed." She stared at the screen, unsure how to feel about this formal erasure of a relationship that, however fraudulent, had been profound in its impact on her life. "That's good, right?" "It is," she agreed. "It's just strange to have something so significant reduced to a legal technicality." Later that evening, alone in her apartment, Olivia opened a bottle of wine to mark the occasion. The annulment represented a clean break legally, but the emotional untangling had proven more complex. She still wore the emerald necklace Robert had given her for her birthday, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder to trust her instincts. She had questioned the extravagant gift at the time, uncomfortable with its expense. Now she recognized that discomfort as an early warning sign she had chosen to ignore. Her doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, she saw her mother holding a small gift bag. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she asked, opening the door. "Patricia called," her mother explained, stepping inside. "I thought you might want company tonight." She held out the bag. "And I brought a little something to celebrate your freedom." Inside the bag, Olivia found a beautiful journal bound in soft leather. "For your new chapter," her mother explained. "Whatever you decide to write in it." They shared the wine and takeout Chinese food, talking late into the evening. When her mother finally prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "You know, when your father and I first heard about Robert's deception, we were devastated for you. We wanted to fix it, to make it go away." She touched Olivia's cheek gently. "But watching you these past months, how you've handled this, how you've grown, I've never been prouder. You didn't just survive this, Olivia. You're transforming it into something meaningful." After her mother left, Olivia opened the new journal and began to write. The words flowed easily, releasing thoughts she had kept carefully contained for months. By midnight, she had filled several pages and made a decision. She would attend Robert's sentencing hearing, not for closure, she had already found that within herself, but to witness the conclusion of this chapter in her life. 2. Weeks later, Olivia sat in the federal courthouse, Noah beside her, as the judge delivered Robert's sentence. The man who stood before the court bore little resemblance to the charismatic community leader she had married. His designer suits had been replaced by a standard-issue jail uniform, his confident posture by a weary slump. When given the opportunity to speak, Robert addressed the court briefly, acknowledging his crimes without offering excuses. Then he turned slightly, his eyes finding Olivia in the gallery. "To those I've hurt personally through my deceptions, particularly Dr. Olivia Mitchell, I offer an apology that I know is insufficient. The harm I've caused can't be undone with words. All I can say is that in the midst of a lifetime of lies, the regret I feel for hurting you is entirely genuine." Olivia maintained eye contact, neither accepting nor rejecting his words. When the bailiff led him away, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders, not forgiveness exactly, but a release from the anger that had coiled within her for months. Outside, the courthouse reporters waited. Most respected her privacy, but one persistent journalist approached as she and Noah walked to her car. "Dr. Mitchell, how do you feel about the sentence? Do you think justice was served?" Before Olivia could decide whether to respond, Noah stepped forward. "Dr. Mitchell has no comment at this time. She's focused on moving forward with her life and her work helping others." As they drove away, Olivia glanced at Noah. "Thank you for that." "Any time," he replied with a small smile. "That's what friends do." 3 weeks later, Olivia stood behind a podium at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Beacon Hill Community Health Clinic. The spring sunshine illuminated the small crowd gathered: hospital administrators, community members, local officials, and a handful of reporters. "This clinic represents the power of resilience and community," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "When we faced unexpected challenges, we had a choice: abandon our vision or redouble our efforts. The fact that we're standing here today shows which path we chose." As she spoke, Olivia scanned the faces before her. Dr. Wilson, beaming with pride, her parents in the front row, Noah offering an encouraging nod from the back. These were the people who had helped her rebuild, who had reminded her of her strength when she had forgotten it. "Many of you know that this project weathered a significant crisis," she continued, acknowledging what everyone present knew, but few mentioned directly to her. "There were moments when it seemed impossible to move forward, but I've learned that even in the aftermath of profound deception, truth provides a foundation on which we can build something authentic and lasting." After the ceremony, as people toured the new facility, Olivia found a quiet moment alone in what would soon be her office. She had accepted a position as the clinic's medical director, splitting her time between this new role and her pediatric practice. The decision had come naturally, a way to create meaning from the painful experience, to transform betrayal into service. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Aisha, Robert's former assistant, who now worked as the clinic's administrator, peeked in. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "A patient, I think. She's asking for you specifically." In the waiting area, Olivia found a young woman holding a toddler on her hip. The woman looked tired but determined. "Dr. Mitchell, I'm Layla Hamid. I heard you speaking at the ceremony." She shifted the child to her other hip. "My daughter needs a doctor who understands our community, someone we can trust." Olivia felt a rush of emotion at the simple declaration of trust, something she had questioned her ability to recognize or deserve after Robert's deception. "I'd be honored to be your daughter's doctor," she said, extending a hand to the little girl, who shyly offered a small high five in return. "Why don't we get her registered today?" That evening, Olivia sat on her apartment balcony, watching the sunset paint the Cambridge skyline in shades of pink and gold. Her phone chimed with a text from Noah. "Dinner tomorrow? Found a new Thai place that supposedly has life-changing pad Thai." She smiled as she typed her reply. "Sounds perfect. Looking forward to it." Placing her phone down, Olivia opened her journal. At the top of a fresh page, she wrote the date, followed by words that had taken months to feel true. "Today was good. Today, I trusted again, both others and myself. Today, I recognized that while one person's deception altered my path, it did not define it. The journey ahead is mine to shape." As the last light faded from the sky, Olivia closed the journal and took a deep breath of the spring air. The broken pieces of her life hadn't simply reassembled into their previous form. They had created something new, something stronger and more authentic than before. The truth, however painful, had ultimately set her free. Fim de Historia. Dear listeners, we hope Dr. Olivia Mitchell's journey from deception to truth has moved you as deeply as it has moved us. For more captivating stories that explore the complexity of human relationships and resilience, we've prepared a special playlist. Find it by clicking to your left. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique narratives that delve into life's most compelling moments. Don't miss our upcoming content, and please share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Olivia's situation? Your perspective matters to our storytelling community.